going.
Yeah, I think we're nearly there. Thanks to Barry's great patience. I think.
Yeah, it's streaming up, so just bear with.
I think that the streaming is about to start, so we will be able to do this. Apologies for the delay.
Yes,
Can I suggest, as a matter of course, we start the streaming 15 minutes early or something, so we don't.
Yeah, if that's.
Okay, that's ready to go. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah. Okay, Tony, over to you. Thanks.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Vince. Thank you, Barry. Good evening, members. Good evening, officers. Welcome to the first Strategy and Resources Committee, which is being held virtually. We have quite a lot of members here. We also have almost all our finance team. You will see their names on the screen. We've got Rona, we've got Catherine. I think I've seen the name earlier, Simon, Martin Field, and of course Grant. So from the finance team, Alison, I think I have seen, and Kate Haka. Excuse me if I'm not pronouncing it correctly, Kate. So I open this meeting with item number 1, minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of February, which have been previously circulated within the 13th of February council book. Are we happy to accept these?
Agreed.
Thank you. Number 2, apologies for absence.
There's no apologies, Chairman. Everybody's present. Okay.
Okay. Declarations of interest. Anybody wants to declare declarations of interest? Any declaration of interest? If so, please unmute yourself so that we can hear.
Thank you, Tony. Yes, I now have unmuted. I'm on item 8. I have a non-pecuniary interest as my wife and daughter are members that go along and use the facilities at the Freedom Leisure.
Okay. Councillor Cooper, Michael Cooper. Anybody else? Yes, Robin. Do you want to unmute yourself, Councillor Blore?
Similarly with me, I'm a member of Freedom Leisure at Stafford.
Okay, thank you. I can only see half of you because the other half is on page 2. So if you don't unmute yourself, I won't be able to see you. Okay. Do I take it there are no other declarations?
I'm Tony, Simon Morrow here. I raised a hand. I don't know whether that's working tonight.
You must be on. Oh no, you are on page 1.
Yeah. Although I'm not a member of the committee, but neither is Councillor Blore. So I suppose I, like him, am a member of the Stafford Leisure Centre.
Thank you, Simon. Good. Anybody else? No. Good. Okay, so we come to item 4. Have there been any questions? Understanding Order 29.
There's no questions, Chairman. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So without further ado, we move to item 5, Council Budget Monitoring Report 2020-21. I'll ask Grant to present this report. You need to unmute yourself, Grant, first. Or maybe I can unmute you from here. Let me just see.
Yep, I've unmuted.
Yeah, brilliant.
Okay, just to say, this is the first financial monitoring report of the year. And normally we don't report this early in the financial year. Normally we don't report till about June or July when we've got 3 months monitoring data. But it was felt that it was important this year, given we've got the impact of COVID, to give members an early view of the whole picture, that is the council's budget, including whatever we might have to spend on COVID, in one overall package. And what we propose to do going forward is to bring a report including figures available to us at the end of May to the June committee on the 11th or 12th of June of S&R. So this report encompasses both the normal council's budget plus the likely impact of COVID-19. As you'll see, it's or as you'll be aware, COVID-19, its ramifications, is a dynamic and changing environment. And I don't have a crystal ball, and I suspect no one really knows exactly how it will play out during the year. Although we might have differing opinions. So in order to deal with that, what we've presented is an optimistic scenario, a pessimistic scenario, and what we believe is a realistic scenario in the report. And that's shown in a table on the first page, what the predicted costs are. Overall, it's 3.9 million. And the detail behind that is shown in the appendices. So Appendix A1 shows the general fund impact. Appendix A2 shows the HRA impact. And Appendix A3 provides you with the detail of the variances which lead up to that impact. What we can say is that in terms of if it wasn't for COVID-19, we would be looking at a position where the council is on target for spend in terms of its budget. And you will notice that in terms of the salaries budget for April, there's a very small overspend, insignificant in fact, of 6,000 on a £10 million budget. And so at the end of April, we're on target effectively. And also you'll note in Appendix C, we've given a indication of, well, an indication of a summary of what the likely forecast is in terms of contractors and temporary staff at the end of this year compared with last year. At September, that was a forecast which we brought to S&R in September, what the likely outturn costs would be in terms of contractors and temporary staff. And as you'll notice, there's been a considerable amount of work by officers to reduce the impact of temporary and consultancy staff, reducing from around 400,000 down from around 2 million. So it's quite significant, pardon me, considerable improvement on that. Also included in the report is a summary of business rates grants about what's happening on that. And hopefully Julie Chester's here and she can speak to any questions members may have on that. Importantly, it identifies that the government on the 13th of May announced an additional amount of money, 5% of the money which we received for the other scheme, to be used at the council's discretion within certain parameters, effectively. And that's ongoing. Well, that work is just about to start, and I can speak to that a bit later on. The other elements are really the capital programme, which you'll notice in terms of the capital programme, as far as the HRA is concerned, virtually all work has ceased at this point in time on HRA repairs and maintenance expenditure. And in terms of new council house building, that's really been forced on the council by the fact of the social distancing rules, and the view was taken fairly early on that people travelling in a van together didn't really meet those rules. So all work has ceased on our building with the exception of one scheme. I think it's the court is been working on at a slower pace because of social distancing. There are a number of other schemes affected by things such as, well, COVID-19, things like the vehicles, the factory's not working at the moment, so there'll be a delay on that scheme, and a few other schemes are also impacted by it. There's also a section here in the report on cash flow, which gives members a view of the impact of cash flow. Essentially, having looked at it, based on the numbers in April, there's a reduction in council tax and also in business rate collections. And we are in the process of modelling at the moment. And our initial view is, based on the modelling information, is that is over 12 months. And when you factor that into the equation.
Looks like we just lost Grant there, Tony.
Yeah, not sure what happened there. Yeah, I know he has a very unreliable connection where he is. I think Grant was getting to the end of what he was going to present, so perhaps I can start I open the floor to contributions, and I'm sure that Grant, let me see if he's joined us. I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm back now.
Oh, you're back. Yeah, I was going to suggest.
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah. I can talk to cash flow more in response to questions if people have some.
Okay. And I think the recommendation currently says that Strategy and Resources Committee considers. I think the proposal is that we make it notes the council's overall financial position, unless of course there are proposals later on to make specific recommendations. But at the moment, the word considers is rather vague. So the thought was that we should say notes, but obviously I'm open to alternative recommendations. So who wants to start the discussion? Are you going to raise your hand physically or use there's a reactions bottom thing at the bottom of the screen, which you have a choice between either clapping or raising your thumb up. So if I use the thumb up, you can see where it comes up on my, and then I'll be able to see you better, or alternatively, just raise your hand, but I'll have to keep flicking from screen 1 to screen 2 to be able to catch all of you. So either one is fine.
Just on a point of order, Chairman, if you
Yes.
go to participants, it gives you the option to raise hand. You click on participants, a whole list of people come on the right-hand side. And
Yes.
you raise hand.
That's what I've got, yes. But that's for me to notice who's raised their hands. I was just explaining from the members' perspective. Yes, I can see Councillor Botton with his hand up. Would you like to start, Councillor Botton?
Thank you, Chairman. I did unfortunately miss the end of Grant's commentary on cash flow, and I'm particularly interested to see how the modelling will progress. And does he have any concerns that we will have a cash flow crisis in the autumn? I know that he regularly sits in on the Surrey Treasurers, and I wondered if there's any opportunity for some collective action across Surrey to mitigate the impact of cash flow difficulties. My other question relates to whether there was to be a working group or some other mechanism for members to be involved in developing a recovery plan. This is obviously a fascinating set of reports, and I thank Grant for the care with which he's put them together. I would really quite like to know what the so what is and how we manage those processes going forward. So firstly, the cash flow and the risk, and secondly, the way forward, if I may, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Botton. Grant, would you like to answer these 2 points?
Yes. I was going to go on to say there are a number of other factors. We've done a preliminary modelling exercise based on April council tax receipts and April business rate receipts. And what that shows initially is that we don't have a problem until January, February, March. So for the bulk of the year, we're okay. And it's January, February, March, where we start to run into some difficulties. In terms of Surrey treasurers, there is an exercise going on. We have from Surrey, so there's a number of factors in play. One is, as I said, that we pay, we collect our council tax receipts over 10 months, but we pay it to Surrey and the other preceptors over 12 months for council tax. The second factor is that we've been in discussions through Surrey treasurers with Surrey, and they've given us a sort of an in principle that they will effectively allow us to flex our precepts in order that we don't run into a cash flow problem. At the moment, we're engaged in a data collection exercise, and we're submitting our information along with all the other boroughs to Surrey, so they can assess what the impact is and how much they would need to borrow to cover themselves for the shortfall in cash flow. So I'm reasonably heartened that we will have some arrangements in place to limit the impact of variations in council tax cash flow. Obviously, it's a developing situation, because whilst our cash flow is down in April, we don't know what May, June, July and August will. It could go down further, or it could start to recover. It's anybody's guess. So all we can do is monitor it on a monthly basis. And as we have an indication from Surrey that they won't leave us in the lurch, then I think we've got a way forward in terms of cash flow for the council tax. Obviously, we'll keep members updated on any changes to that. As far as business rates is concerned, the bulk of the money which we collect, and I'm sure you can see from the report, is collected by the council, but the majority of it is paid to the government in one form or another. We're required in a normal year, we would collect around 21 million, 22 million of business rates receipt, and 50% of that we would have to hand over to the government as what is termed the central share. So immediately 10.5 million would go to the government. We're allowed to keep 40%, in theory at least, but then we have to suffer a tariff on top of that. So whilst we would get 40%, we then have to pay £8 million to the government as a tariff. And then we're left with the residual amount, which is 1.5, 1.8 million, etc. So what you say, out of 21 million, the authority only keeps 1.8, one and a bit million, whatever that bit is. And we have to pay 2.1 million to Surrey. So that's a bigger risk for us in one way, although the sum involved is lower than the 70 million of council tax receipts. Now, the government has given us a 3-month moratorium on paying them 50%, and we don't have to pay that to July. So we factored that into the equation. But obviously, the amount, even if Surrey flex their 2 million, it doesn't really affect the government, the amount that the government are paying, because at the moment they've only flexed theirs by 3 months. So based on that profile, we will be in a January, February, March situation where we're short, but we don't have any potential solutions. Even if Surrey flex theirs, it wouldn't significantly impact on, but obviously that will be part of the equation as well. So that's the position on cash flow, if that's clear. In terms of the way forward, obviously what we're going to do is to update our numbers each month, and we're going to review with budget managers what the likely impact is. Obviously, there are certain large numbers in there which actually drive the cost significantly. One in the waste area. I mean, they're all significant numbers as far as council budget is concerned, but the two biggest are the waste area and the leisure the leisure area as a result of the potential situation which we come on to with Freedom Leisure. And we've included about 900,000, nearly $1 million in there for Freedom Leisure, assuming we had to do it for the whole year. So that's a pretty we've taken our realistic is a pretty pessimistic view, but that's a large number out of the 3.8 million. And obviously that's affected by any decisions that members choose to take in terms of Freedom Leisure. The other big item is, biggest item is £1 million, which we've included for waste. And that really is a concern that if we have to do more social distancing for the cabs, for the drivers in the waste collection service, at the moment, I believe, I don't think Simon's here, but I think he's telling me that there's 3 people in a cab. And really, we should have few people in the cab. And if you do that, you need more people and more crews. So we've allowed that in that equation. But I mean, there's a degree of hope that that would not be required. And if it does, obviously, that would take a big, reduce that number quite significantly. So in terms of way forward, what we propose to do is bring it to members and update these numbers. And obviously, I'm hopeful that we can whittle some of these numbers down. In addition to that, of course, we've got, we're submitting returns to the government on COVID-19. We've put together an April return, which they've had. And on the basis of that, we got the 25,000 and then the 800,000. We've been asked to give them much more detailed information in the May return, which we've just submitted. And in the May return, we've included effectively the £1 million for Freedom Leisure in that number, and obviously the waste numbers. So that in itself may drive, well, we would hope it would drive additional funding from central government. And there is lobbying taking place. We've been coordinating our information so that the LGA and the DCN can use that to make the case for local government that it needs additional funding to cover some of the areas. So we would hope that there would be more money to follow. But as I've said in the report, there is a nervousness amongst treasurers and I think judged by long experience of government, which is that they don't always recompense you in as fully as you think you should be entitled to. And obviously, as the crisis abates, the need to demonstrate they're doing something may abate with it. That's all I have to say, I think. I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Grant. I now go to Councillor Bourne. I think you need to unmute yourself, Kevin.
Yeah, found it. Thank you. Thanks very much for letting me speak now. Okay, so I've actually got a comment, Chair, that I think would be better to talk about in part 2. So perhaps it doesn't affect the recommendation, but perhaps when we move into part 2 later, we can just reserve a little bit of space to ask a couple of questions on something.
Okay, we can do that.
Thank you. So there's a couple of areas I just want to ask questions on. The first, as you've just been discussing it, with regard to the cash flow, I understand obviously the cash flow issues and paying the amounts over to Surrey, the police and central government. I just wanted to clarify though, that if we actually, as the report talked about, if we actually collect less because there are more arrears throughout the year that are uncollectible, do we still have to pay the same full amounts to the other operators, or do we does that reduce? So how much we pay everybody else, does that reduce in line with the reduction in what gets collected? And that's across council tax and business rates. So could you just clarify that for me in a moment, please? In point 9.7 at the top of page 9, in the second line, it talks about £7.2 million on a monthly basis for business rates holiday. Bearing in mind we only collect 22 million in a year. Sorry, is that correct? Should that say on an annual basis, perhaps?
Which paragraph is this, Councillor
Sorry,
Ball?
9.7 at the top of page 9.
9.7.
The second line, it talks about business rates holiday of 7.2 million on a monthly basis. But is that 7.2 the actual annual figure? So that's divided by 12. I just wanted to clarify that, if you.
Thank you.
Mind. And the last questions for the moment are to do with the business support grants. So going back to 3.4 and 3.5. So in 3.4, there's it works out that there's only 30 applications that have come in so far that have actually been rejected. Now, obviously, we're aware that some of those have been looked at again. Can we have confirmation from one of the team, if they're here, that all 30 of those have been gone over to make sure that they were correctly rejected? Because we know 1 or 2 weren't at the time. And in point 3.5, is there any update? The guidance was actually published on the 13th of May, which is a few days ago now, obviously. So have you guys started working on a structure for how the discretionary funds are going to be suggested to be pushed out? And are you going to be discussing that structure with members, as it is discretionary, to see if we agree with the ideas that you have? I've read the guidance. It seems reasonably clear which direction it's pointing in, but there is latitude. So I think it would be worth having a discussion on that as well, to know where you're at. Those are the questions. I've then just got one sort of particular comment to make, which I think reflects Councillor Bottom's from just now, which is that this report at the moment is full of information, but it doesn't really lead us anywhere. And I think I would like to suggest that we need to be having meetings outside of the council chamber to understand a lot of this detail and to make sure that these reports are structured in a way that is going to help us to understand what is going on. There's a lot of information, but it's just not structured in a way that helps me to lead from here we are today to where we might be tomorrow. And it's that structure that I think really needs to be looked at. And I think perhaps the team could benefit from doing that offline with some of the members. And at that point, we might be able to bring a report to the future SNRs that is structured in a way that you end up with fewer questions and hopefully more answers. So that's it from me for the moment, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bourne. Grant, you've got a long list there to comment on.
Hopefully I'll pick them up. I'm going to do the easy one first, I think, and the easy one is the 7.2 million. I think that's just, I badly worded it. It is a 7.2 million annual amount, but it's paid to us on a monthly instalment basis. So I think that ticks that one. In terms of, I'll also move on to business support grants. In terms of the business support grants and the discretionary fund, we are proposing to bring to SNR on the 11th of June or 12th, whichever day is 12th, is it? A draft policy for members to agree. And obviously, there's a potential for member involvement in that decision-making approach. So we'll offer some options around that as to give members confidence, if they so wish, that officers are making recommendations and give members the final say, given that it's a discretionary fund. But there will be a policy brought forward to the next SNR, which sets all of that out. I'll leave the projections for a minute and I'll move forward to does the amount go down? Unfortunately not. It's the amount which is being set by the government. So at this point in time, if we collect less money, then our cash flow would be short effectively. There's no way around that at the moment. Obviously, there may be discussions later on with government, and that's something that we can pursue. One thing to bear in mind, of course, is not only have they given us a delay in terms of the business rate, the business rate payments that we have to make to them till July, they have also paid us 7.2 million. Well, they're paying us the 7.2 million. So that de-risks our cash flow. We're not suffering a potential loss on the 21 million. We're suffering it on the 21 million minus the 7.2 million, effectively. So there is an element of reduction in risk, a third of the overall rate base. So effectively, that's money which is guaranteed from the government and is not subject to risk. Finally, in terms of the rejections, I'm not sure if my colleague Julie Chester's on the line.
I'm here.
Just have a look. Oh, you're there, Julie. Julie, did you want to? Yeah.
If I give you a quick update of where we are with the business support grants at the moment, we've currently had over, we've received 1,466 applications, of which 1,164 have been paid and approved, totaling about 14,735,000. We still have, we're up to date with all the applications. At the moment, we've only got a couple that haven't been processed that have come in today. We have actually identified 1,677 potential businesses that could apply for these grants. So in effect, we're still just over 500 short of the actual number of the applicants. So, which was why we distributed the list a couple of weeks back to see if we could prompt some. Now, that number has gone down by a couple of hundred since we distributed that list. And we are this week going to try and shimmy people along and email people and send out a mail shot. And we may have to resort into telephone calls as well. In terms of the cases that were refused, we have gone back over some of them, and in line with the responses that we've had from some of yourselves and the actual ratepayers, some of those decisions have been overturned, mainly because of the further information that's been provided. When we first do these, when we did the identifying of the cases, we had to go on the property description. And unfortunately, they're not all in line with the actual nature of the business. So once the further information has come in, we can then review the situation, and they are being looked at on an individual basis. So some of them have been reversed and paid. Obviously, there are still some that don't fit the criteria. A big part of that is industrial properties that just do not have any visiting members of the public. And I think the discretionary pot is also aimed at those type of businesses in which we may be able to help once we've put a policy in place. The only problem with that is it's only £900,000, and potentially we've got about 1,200 businesses that actually occupy rateable dwellings, rateable units that we could help. So it's not actually going to go that far. And then there's also the shared offices, the market traders and bed and breakfast that can also apply. So the policy needs to be quite stringent, and we're going to have to come up with different bands on as to who we include, so that there's no backlash from it, really. I believe Grant's got some further information on that from the Surrey Treasurers meeting. Does that answer your question on the...
Thank you, Julie. Councillor Bourne, I see you put your hand up again. Is it on the same point or is it a different point?
Grant just misunderstood me slightly on the point with regard to the council tax and the business rates. I understand that there's going to be cash flow issues. What I was trying to ask, and maybe in a ham-fisted way, was who pays in the end? So if we collect less money, does everyone share that less, or do we as the collector foot the bill essentially for all of the reduction in money that if we collect less across the year? Is that clearer, Grant, what I'm trying to ask?
Yes, do you want to come back, Grant, and unmute? Yeah.
Well, yes, okay. Bit complex, but what happens is, yes, we would have to bear the cost initially, but at the end of the year, all this money would go into the collection fund, and any shortfall in the overall council tax, assuming we don't collect it, there's a difference between the billable amount and, if you like, the cash flow. So if we're never able to collect it and we have to increase our bad debt provision because we've deemed that we've tried everything we can, these people have gone into liquidation, we can't pursue them for the money, then we would need to increase our bad debt provision within the collection fund. And what that would do is it would reduce the overall amount in the collection fund, and that amount will be shared out between the preceptors on the same basis. So Surrey would take the biggest hit, effectively, and so we would all the county, ourselves, and the police would share the reduction in the collection of business rates, effectively.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant. I have Councillor Jex next.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think actually Kevin asked most of the questions that I was going to ask, but just to be absolutely clear, I understand the answer to the question with regard to business rates, but what about residential council tax, where we're essentially paying across something like 8 times what it is that we receive? What I'm not clear about is, should we decide to pay across 8 times what we receive rather than the whole precept? Because I think what I heard you say when you're talking about Surrey flexing, they're flexing the timing, they're not flexing the amount. If we were to simply pay the proportion of what we actually receive, what is the sanction that would be held against us? Because to me that seems like the obviously equitable thing to do. But I know in local government what seems obvious isn't always the case.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Grant, do you want to comment on this?
Yes. In the same way, I approach it in the same way that business rates, income, if it's short because people have gone, well, like, individuals can't go into liquidation, I suppose, but if people aren't able to pay their council tax, then in theory we would increase the bad debt provision within the collection fund for that as well, and Surrey would share in that loss of income in the same proportions as the precept, effectively. So if we weren't able to collect all of the money because people had skipped, had left, or whatever reason, and we had to write the bad debts off, that would be shared by all the preceptors, us, Surrey, and the police. In terms of the issue about whether it's a statutory requirement to pay the precepts. Once they're set, they've been set by law, effectively. We're into uncharted territory if we didn't do that. I don't imagine there will be many council treasurers that would want to unilaterally impose that on the county. But what we're saying is we've got some agreement with the county that they will they will flex those payments. They wouldn't, the payments themselves, we would have to pay those all by the end of the year. They would have to 100% payments because that's linked into their budget, into the budgeting system effectively. So Surrey's budget has already included that amount as their income. If we didn't collect all of that money, whilst it be a short-term cash flow issue, what would happen is that we would recover that loss from Surrey in the new year through the collection fund because of an increase in the bad debt provision. So we'd recover the cash flow in that way because we would reduce their 21-22 income by a deficit on the collection fund, which would mean that we wouldn't pay so much over to them in the following year. So we would get our money back, but it would be delayed a year.
But you know that what I'm really concerned about is that we've got a leveraged bad debt situation. But what you're saying is it's not a leveraged situation; it's just a cash flow issue.
Yes, it's a cash flow. It is a cash flow issue, any losses would be borne by the preceptors anyway. So if half the council taxpayers couldn't pay their council tax ever, and we had to write it off, then Surrey would pick up their chunk of that, whatever the percentage is, a large percentage of it. I'm trying to think what it is, about 75%. So Surrey would automatically pick up 75% of the losses, and the police would pick up 12%, and we'd pick up 12%.
Yes, the other point, if I may add, is that we collect the council tax over 10 months, and we pay Surrey and the police over 12 months. So there is a built-in cushion, if you like, in terms of cash flow, in addition to what Grant has just explained. So I think the finance team is monitoring this very, very closely. And as Grant said earlier, they will be reporting monthly. So they are keeping a close eye on how the collection is proceeding. That's correct, isn't it, Grant?
Correct. That's correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, we're looking at every month effectively.
Indeed.
So obviously, if the percentage starts to increase that we're not collecting, then obviously we will be talking to Surrey about that. One would hope it would settle down effectively, but it's too early to say really on 1 month's data.
Councillor Langton next. Chris, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Tony. Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, it's really good that you've got 3 scenarios there, and you've defined, of course, what the realistic scenario is in paragraph 4.4. But of course, the devil's in the detail, isn't it? And I'm just thinking that you've already mentioned that the ability to collect council charge and business rates is absolutely fundamental. And I just wonder whether we ought to be a little bit more precise about the assumptions that go into that realistic scenario, particularly in terms of the big levers like the collection of council charge and business rates. The reason being is if those collection rates vary significantly, one would then rework the forecast immediately, knowing that that was one of the bigger factors. I mean, I know it's more work, and obviously the amount of detail you've gone into already, Grant, is superb. But I just wonder whether you ought to be a little bit more specific about the underlying assumptions beneath the realistic, just so that if things don't go according to plan, it immediately puts a flag up and then you rework the forecast. Thank you.
Yeah.
Obviously, when we come back to the June committee, we could put some more information in about our assumptions about realistic. Obviously, you know, these figures were prepared some time ago, and it's a constantly moving feast as things, as more information arrives and decisions are taken by government, etc. We don't know when obviously when the lockdown will end. We all like to think it will be end of June, but maybe it won't, and no one really knows. We're not really sure. The latest information on which we prepared our last return to government was on the basis, which was what they told us to prepare it on the basis of, was 4 months of lockdown and 8 months of unlocking. Previously, we've been told by them 3 months of lockdown, 3 months of unlocking, 6 months of normal. So is a constantly changing set of scenarios all the time. But certainly we can put more information in terms of what our realistic assumptions are. And if it's decided that members want to have some sort of workshop or whatever arrangement, cross-party arrangement you want to have in order to examine the numbers more fully, then obviously we can operate with that in a sort of more interactive way, if you like.
Thank you. Councillor Sayer.
Thank you. Could I just come back to Councillor Botton's suggestion of a recovery working group? Personally, I think that there's quite a lot of information in this paper, but I received it quite late. I think it was last Thursday. So not any time to ask questions really. And I think it's very important at this time that councillors are able to be kept up to date. Everybody says it's a fast moving situation. There's lots of things changing. I think it'd be really useful to have that working group and for it to be people on it to represent all the main groups sort of proportionately in the way they would on a committee, because that would give an opportunity for us to be satisfied. So, I mean, there's been a lot of questions tonight. Probably quite a lot of them could have been dealt with if we'd known a bit earlier what was going on. So perhaps Grant could say if he would be happy if that was set up. Thank you.
Well, I mean, can I just butt in? That has been raised by Councillor Botton, as you say before. Can we take it away and think about it a bit? For the simple reason is there are 41 of us with a lot of, some of us more interested in the subject than others. So to me, it's not a question of politically balanced or not. It's a question of how to capture the talent of a lot of members who are interested in this subject. So to me, my gut feeling would be a workshop rather than a working group. But the next meeting is only on the 11th of June. Perhaps we can come back with some ideas then, and then we can discuss it further. I see Councillor Jex wants to.
Yeah, can I just say that I think the idea, the basic idea is good. My question is about the timing, because we're so early in the year that almost everything is kind of a shot in the dark, and as time goes by we'll be more accurate. And I'm just wondering if a month or two down the road we're likely to have a much more useful debate. But I'm with Catherine in terms of the idea of having some kind of group offline that can go into more detail than we're ever going to go in on a committee like this.
Could I just answer a couple of those points or elaborate on them? I think it's quite important to have it now because of the information factor. I think people are quite twitchy now. I think personally I get quite a few emails from residents asking what's happening, particularly what's happening with the property investments. I'm not in a position to answer most of the time because I haven't got the information. I think it'd be very useful, I accept Keith's point that later in the year we'll know more, but just to have that information available is very useful. I think on the political balance front, that is very important. I think there's skills across all the main groups. So I don't think it's a matter of having to have a lot from one group or a lot from another. I think you don't want it to be too big. You just want to have the people who are most interested and can bring most to the debate. And I think you probably get that just by allocating people to it on a main group basis. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, can I just come in on that point? I think that the critical point that's been made was made by Tony, has been made by Grant. The information that you've currently got is 1 month. We wouldn't normally do this for 3 months. That's an unusual situation, and the figures you're going to start playing with are very, very unreliable. However, next month, we've got a bit more information, and that's why I think where we're coming from, it would be much better to wait another month just to see how those things vary. Some may harden up, some may become more open, but it seemed to me to be better. Let's see what happens on the 11th of June, and then, yes, we might be able to do something a bit more useful at that point.
Councillor Rick, would you like to? Are you there, Jackie? You need to unmute yourself, please.
Sorry, Chairman. The question I had was not on the one we're debating at the moment. Is that all right to carry on?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Lovely. This was just in the report on page 14. There was Hackney carriages and private hire, and there was a line in it I didn't understand. It says, whilst in lockdown, there isn't likely to be any income from Hackney carriages, and this might push some drivers to seek our work and not return to taxi driving. What work is our work, please? Thank you, Chairman.
I think this is meant to mean other work rather than our work. I think it's a typing mistake. But Grant will confirm.
Chair, could I suggest? I think Rona's on. Rona should be online, and Rona should be able to provide a.
Yeah, hi, good evening. Yes, apologies, a typo. Thank you for spotting it, but it should be other work. Apologies.
Thank you,
Oh, right. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense now then. Thank you very much.
That was only guesswork on my part, but I'm pleased Rona has confirmed it. Any other points, Councillor Wren?
No, that's all. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, Councillor Morrow next.
Thank you, Chairman. Just wanted to ask some questions on page 11, the appendix with the various overspends. The biggest hit we're predicted to take is this £1 million on the risk that social distancing might be enforced in the waste collection service, so that we have to have more vehicles, etc. Given that it's just been confirmed that isn't happening at the moment, what is the likelihood, and you would have thought that if it was going to happen, it would be happening now and there'd be discussions going on. What is the likelihood of that happening given where we are now, and given that I presume industry discussions are going on as to whether it is necessary or not? Because if we can get rid of that million, that makes a big difference. Second question, just underneath that, cemetery services is not a huge figure, 150,000, but I was rather surprised of an overspend there. I'm treasurer of All Saints Church Wallingham, and we have seen a large increase, sadly, in burials, and therefore the fee income that we are getting has gone up quite significantly. And I'm surprised that that isn't being seen in Caterham, or perhaps they're no longer doing burials, but that's my question there. And on planning, where there's a huge hit predicted on planning applications and building control. Again, the lists that are coming through every week, the planning applications, seem to be no shorter than they usually are. The government has made a great play of getting the building trade going, getting a housing market going and everything. Isn't that those figures for planning and building control awfully over pessimistic? Thank you, Jim.
Right. Grant, do you want to answer these?
Well, perhaps Rona can come in. I mean, I think in terms of, oh, sorry, you happy? Yeah.
I'm happy to answer on a couple of them.
Okay.
I can certainly answer on the waste distancing. We really don't know at the moment. That's the problem. There's been quite a lot of union talk, so I wouldn't like to say that it's not realistic at the moment. There's quite a lot of things going on at the moment, and I don't think it's one that we can discount at the moment. So I'd like to add that, especially seeing as we are one of the few that have 3 in the cab rather than less than that, which is, we've got other plans of how to do things, maybe have different ways that people can be actually delivered to different parts of the rounds, but it's certainly a big unknown at the moment, which is why the figure's still there. And with regard to the burials, that figure is for national assistance burials, which at the moment we're not seeing too many, but it is something that unfortunately we're building in the figures.
Sorry, but aren't you seeing a big increase in burials and therefore a big increase in fees?
It's to do with national assistance ones, the public health funerals, effectively. It's ones that the council has to pay themselves, and whether or not it's ones effectively without family to be able to pick up and help with costs. So we're just making an allowance for that.
Do we not do burials of people who pay fees?
Yes, yes, but this is to
You
do
have a
with
big increase. I'm seeing a big increase
well,
in income, so that offsets your increased expense.
to be honest, we haven't seen a huge increase in the number of private burials at the moment. We're not seeing a huge increase. Sadly, I know that a lot of the crematoriums are very busy. I can't go with the planning question, so I don't know whether Grant or anyone to go for that one.
Would you like me to come in on that one?
Thank you, Charlotte.
Yes, Charlotte, please do.
I think we are anticipating there will be a fall off in applications, both for planning applications and building control at some point, but it hasn't really worked its way through the system yet. So it's the same message we've had elsewhere. It's early days and we're watching this space. I think there will be a time lag on this because it's going to be about whether people have been able to get out and do the preparatory work to put an application together, both for planning and building control. So it is watch this space, but it's certainly the case in the planning side that we haven't really seen any remarkable change yet in applications coming in. But I think it's right to be cautious and perhaps pessimistic about the impact, and to a certain extent there will be confidence in people coming forward and you know, investing in applications and planning proposals. So that's where we are at the moment.
Thank you, Charlotte. Good. Councillor Lockwood, I think, is next. Are you there, Liz?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. It's taken the conversation back a little bit in terms of the reduction of income in council tax. You've talked about that there is going to be some kind of fluidity between the district, the county, and the police. At what point does the difficulty that the parish councils are going to have? We don't have a bad debt provision in our parish council precept. And if we were to lose 20% of our income and it wasn't funded by central government to make up the difference, some of the smaller parish councils have much higher overheads because they are legally required to have a clerk and a website and all the other trappings that are essential in running a parish council as a legal requirement. You can't duck out of it. How a parish council is going to make up a potential shortfall, we have no idea at this stage how effective you're going to be at collecting council tax. I don't think the economic hit has actually hit the economy, kind of thing. I think that there's going to be quite a long time before people get working again. I'm certainly thinking in Lingfield, we've got huge numbers of people who have 0-hour jobs, who are low-paid workers who are not working at the moment. And the sectors of the economy that they work in is collapsing. So the future for parish councils, what kind of assurances can we have on that one? And I would just like to ask a question about this helping the identification of potential business grant receivers. I'd be more than happy to have been asked. I didn't put my name forward. I did get a list. But the point I want to make is that list is very difficult for the council to work with. It's even more difficult for me as an individual to work with just a name and an address and a telephone number. Fortunately, I have quite a good local knowledge, and your list is a bit out of date in some respects. So hopefully I will be able to fill in some gaps. But that has proved a bit of a difficulty because the request to look at the list was hidden in an email with the Surrey County Council daily briefing, and I'm afraid I didn't give much notice to it until this agenda came out. And I would like to say I didn't get it until Saturday. Okay, I'm not on the committee, but that it does make for difficulties. So as an ordinary member who's not on the committee, thank you for letting me speak. But I just wanted to make those points. Thanks.
Thank you, Liz. Grant, do you want to comment on these points? I think the parishes first, please.
Yes. In terms of parishes, we've paid the parishes we pay them in 6 monthly instalments, and I think they've had the first one, and the next one is September. I'm not cited, to be honest, in terms of what the impact on the parishes will be, but certainly when we come back in June, I will have a look at that separately and see what the net loss would be to the parishes, effectively, and so I can feedback on that then. But I haven't done a lot of work on the parishes, to be honest. But I will look at it and come back in June on that one. In terms of the business grants, well, apologies for the fact it was included in another email. I'm sorry, I didn't have sight of that really, because that went out via comms. But
can I just comment on that when you've got a moment, Grant? Just to say, yes, that was I think because not really, members have a lot of emails, and so in the future, anything where we're asking members specifically for their support and their help on these things, we will send them out under a separate cover with very clear heading to say what the email is. So actually, the daily updates will be daily updates, but where we're asking for members to help on things like approaching local businesses, then that will be a separate email, and we'll make it very clear in the heading. So apologies for that.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, are you satisfied, Councillor Lockwood? Yeah, thank you. Right, Councillor Allen is next. Are you there, Martin? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have been there, although my hand was taken down after Mr. Councillor Botton did his first speech about half an hour ago. But
no, I'm following the order here on my.
I know, but I was on there. But let me go backwards anyway. Apologies. So I've got a few questions. So if you don't mind, start writing down. On page 3, we're talking about reductions in the waste and recycling income. And yet I think we're all seeing emails about just how much recycling waste and green waste have all increased. So I'm not sure how those two statements are compatible. And to take up the point just raised by Councillor Lockwood and Mr. Smith, I have not received anything at all in the way of assistance regarding business support grants for anyone in Tatsfield. I did ask for some information, I got it. I've subsequently asked for information and I have received it. Sorry, I'm still waiting to receive it. So I'm actually grateful that, we shouldn't have to ask to assist our own residents. I think all of this stuff should be sent to us whether we like it or not. And for those people like Councillor Lockwood, obviously, and myself, to do something about it. But it's up to other people as to whether they want to do that or not. But I'd appreciate, please, a complete update for Tatsfield. On page 5, right down at 5.2, it's saying that we're going to have an overspend of 156,000. And my question simply there is why? If we are going to receive less, why don't we just reduce our expenditure accordingly? So 156,000 overspend is just dissipated across everything that we're going to spend, but in a shorter quantity of figures. That would make more sense to me. And Grant, with your salaries overspend, April P1 of 6,713, the way I read that, that's going to be an overspend April, May, June, July, August, September and October. Is that correct? Or are we going to stop paying these people the 6,000 overspend for May? Bear with me, please, okay, because some of the questions have been answered, some haven't. But also, before I get there, there does seem to be a lot of cut and pasting, which has made the reports a little bit strange. Page 17, Housing Committee has reference to the planning policy salaries and planning policy non-salaries. Again, right down the bottom, private sector enabling. I'm not quite sure why we're going to lose £12,500 if Millbrook have deployed their staff. And I was almost loath to ask that one, remembering Councillor Botton's remark about we argue over the smallest figures, but that was one of the few that I've raised. And again, same on the page 22, firstly, it says the neighbourhood plan. Is there a specific neighbourhood plan, or is that the local plan? I'm not sure what that means. And again, on page 23, we've got Strategy and Resources Committee quoting the Planning Policy Committee budget. Thank you. That's all my little questions and foibles.
Thank you, Martin. Yes, Grant. You want to take these one at a time?
Right. Okay. Where to start? Ronan, do you think? Ronan, are you able to give an update on the waste and recycling income? Provide a bit more data, info.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't quite catch the full question. So can I just verify? So it's regarding the actual increase in recycling monies. Is that what we're talking about?
I think
the left hand is saying we're getting bigger increases, and this paper is saying we're going to lose income.
In particular, which point are you referring to? Sorry, Councillor Allen.
Page 3. It says waste and recycling income as part of what we're going to lose this year. So we're going to lose waste and recycling income.
Well, I think it's the expenditure.
I'll move on.
It's the expenditure that's going up rather than. Where did you see that on page 3, Councillor Allen?
Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th line.
Off the top.
At the top of page 3, it says the areas which are anticipated to be badly affected, and if you miss everything in between, it says waste and recycling income.
Waste and recycling income, yes.
But we're seeing emails coming from the same council that's saying this, that everything is up. So I don't understand why we're losing income if we're collecting more.
Well, I think the income reduction.
Sure. So I think this is to do with so we get income from our clothes banks and also from our cardboard. Those prices are obviously dropped completely, and so we're not going to pick up that income anymore. It's not a huge amount of money; it's small numbers, but I think that's where that comment is referring to.
And the recycling credits from Surrey presumably are tailing off as well, so that's quite a.
Yes, but they're normally a fixed element, I believe. I don't think, so they're normally a fixed element agreed in the budget. Okay, but they are tailing off, correct? Yes.
Thank you on that.
Okay. Yeah, Grant.
If I pick up if I pick up the salaries point, no, it's not correct to say that the 6,000 will continue each month, because there's a continual churn of people. We've got a number of vacancies. Some people leave for whatever reason. We've also got contractors and temporary staff built into that figure, and a number of those are finishing at the end of May. So my belief is, especially as Jackie King and myself are closely monitoring it and controlling spend on salaries now, that will not increase going forward, and hopefully will start to fall, and potentially there may be an underspend on salaries. That is a snapshot, a particular point in time. So you can't just, it's a moving feast. It will change every month. People will leave, people will join, etc., etc. So, but that gives me great heart that actually we will not overspend at the year end on salaries, including contractors and temporary staff.
Okay.
The other points. Sorry, I missed the 156. Whereabouts is the 156? Sorry. Where did you pick that up from?
156, page 5, 5.2.
Page 5. Okay, this is on the housing revenue account, and this is essentially that we're assuming that the level of rent that we collect will fall this year, given that obviously the people paying rent are not amongst the less affluent in our community, and obviously they're likely to be badly affected by things like being on 0 hours contract, etc. And actually losing their jobs. They might have not been furloughed, etc. So that's a forecast in terms of what we believe we will lose in terms of rent within the housing revenue account.
But my question was, why do we need to? Why should we overspend? Just reduce the expense on the other side to even it out to a 0 is what I'm suggesting.
Well, there is a possibility that could happen and maybe managed in year. We would hope so. I think we're particularly focusing on the 156. There is the potential for doing that within the HRA to restricting our expenditure. It's not a large sum of money. If it was 2.5 million, then that would be a bigger cause of concern, because obviously the impact of reducing our expenditure by a much larger sum would obviously impact. But I'm sure that the 156 may well be able to be managed as part of the overall HRA. But of course, there may be other pressures as well on the HRA.
Yep.
But yeah.
And if someone could offer me, please, that they will deal with a business support grant for me for Tapsfield, please.
Yeah, Julie, could you answer that?
Yeah, I'm doing that now for you. I'm just updating the list to take out anyone that's applied since we last issued the list. So that will be with you in about 2 or 3 minutes.
That's great. Thanks very much. I'm muting now.
All right.
Good. Councillor Bourne, I think you're next.
Thank you. Yes, just coming back on the working group. Timing for modelling is essential. It's going to take time to sort out the structure and the format of everything that needs to be put together to make sure it makes sense. And the sooner you start, the sooner it's actually available. You don't wait until you need the data before you start working out how you put it together. And by the time you've actually built that structure, then when the numbers change, which obviously we expect them to all the time, it's really easy to just plug the numbers in differently, and it tells you what the net effect of the changes are. So timing is everything, and now is the time to start putting it together, not later. That's crazy. And too many cooks. Let's not have too many cooks working on this, but we do need to have it cross-party for everyone to have their input. That's very reasonable. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I've given my thoughts earlier. I think there can be as many cooks as would like to be involved. It's a question of capturing the talent available to our 41 members. We might have more cooks from one corner of the chamber than there are from another corner. So can I ask we just have a conversation offline on this? We have another meeting coming up in a couple of weeks, and we can progress this matter. Councillor White, and then Councillor Button, I think you're next. Shall we, Councillor White, Nicholas White, and then Councillor Button?
Chairman, thank you very much. I must say, I asked James Devonshire yesterday for an update of the small business list, which he sent me straight away. And I must say, I found it very helpful. And there have been a lot of little companies who weren't aware that there was potentially this grant available. So they've been very, very grateful where I've spoken with them. And secondly, I would agree with Councillor Sayers and Bourne that information does need to be updated on a regular basis, because life is changing so fast. And I disagree with Councillor Cooper, who says leave it until June. it actually has to go on now so that we can then have a plan when things come to a better situation that we can work and build on for the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Button.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the fact that we're an hour and a half nearly into this meeting indicates that running a workshop is going to be quite challenging, given the complex nature of this and the way in which these virtual meetings need to be conducted. I support the comments of colleagues who are anxious that we get on with the modelling and get on with the preparation of a recovery plan. So I'm now formally proposing that we form a politically balanced working group before the June the 11th meeting. The June the 11th meeting can confirm the terms of reference if necessary, but I don't believe workshopping these issues is going to be productive in this current circumstances. Under ordinary circumstances, I'm sure it would have been. So I'm going to make a formal proposal, please, that we have a recovery working group established as soon as practicable with the terms of reference to be agreed on the 11th. Thank you, Chairman.
I'll second that straight away.
Okay. Would any other members like to speak on this matter? Thank you, sir. Councillor Cooper, I think I see your hand is up. Do you still want to speak, or shall we go to a vote perhaps on this?
Yes, Chairman, I'd like to say at least a few words. I think what I worry about on this is it's what I call political itch. Something's happening, so politicians want to do something. And I'm all in favour of that, providing what we do is based on good information. There's an old adage in IT, garbage in, garbage out. And at the moment, I don't think we have good information. We have what Grant has done as a first guess. And it's a good guess, but at this point, it is a guess. It's based on very little information. Next month, we will get further information and we'll be able to refine what we're doing. I think to suggest that Grant hasn't put modelling in place is a little bit unfair on Grant. He has, and he is able to progress this with the information as it comes through. It worries me seriously if we think we're going to get minute by minute information, which is almost, I think, what Kevin Bourne's suggesting, that we're updating all the time. Our officers have other things to do to find out that information, let alone actually start feeding it through to us. So whilst I'm not uncomfortable with the idea of doing something when we have a good, not only idea of the information today, but the trends, which is the important thing, we don't have trends. We have a guess at this point. The best that we can get, but it's still a guess. And one only has to look at some of the figures to realise that's the situation. So until we get some trends, we can't actually decide anything. So I'm just curious, perhaps Councillor Bottom and Councillor Bourne might like to put a paper together, which we could actually look at next time round as to what they think is going to happen. Because at the moment, I'm sure I'm not the only one who's totally unclear about what they're going to do. So have a group, yes. To do what? How? And that's what concerns me, I think. So yeah, we have, it's only 4 weeks away, the 11th of June, not exactly a lifetime. So I think I'd like to see, and certainly I know that Grant has agreed that, you know, we will have updated figures. We will therefore have trends, and we will therefore have much more information to work on. So happy to sort of see this thing put forward, but concerned that it's a political itch rather than a reality of what we can do.
Thank you. Councillor Jacks.
Yes, sorry, Chairman, to lengthen this. I can see some significant advantages to some of what's being proposed here, because apart from anything else, it would be great if all the questions that are currently being raised and have taken about an hour to deal with, if they were actually all asked in advance and settled in advance, so that this committee could spend its time taking the key decisions on what we do with the information. So I can see some real benefits in that. Personally, I wouldn't particularly resist the idea of it being politically balanced, because as Catherine quite rightly said, all the groups have got sufficient people of talent to be able to fill it up. But I'm just struggling slightly at the moment to understand exactly how we'd make this work and to understand exactly what we would want it to be doing. Because from my perspective, it's about giving enough people enough information and enough time to be able to delve into the real detail, to take it away from this committee so that the committee can make strategic decisions based on proper data. I'm just not sure that setting up a working group now that meets before the June 11th meeting is going to achieve very much. So I guess if I'm voting now, I'd probably abstain for what it's worth, even though in terms of the principle of let's get the details hammered out outside of this meeting, I'd be very much in favour of that, because I think it's a much more effective use of everybody's time on this committee.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Jackson. I mean, just to clarify something that's been said earlier, 11th of June is less than 3 weeks away. The papers for that would have to be out at the beginning of June. So this is like 10 days away. I can't see any group being able to meet that quickly. I mean, it will take several days to find out who is interested to sit on this group and so on. And with the best will in the world, we need to have some sort of terms of reference for this working group so that the officers can comment as to whether they have the capacity to provide information to this group.
Can I come back, Tony, and just make a suggestion that what we actually need is a please very short paper to the June 11th meeting spelling out what this looks like and what the terms of reference are.
Yeah. Okay.
But the emphasis on very short, please.
Okay. Councillor Purshouse, you're next.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just point out that if we have a properly constituted working group, as is being proposed, any member of the council can attend that working group if they're interested in the subject.
Indeed. Councillor Farr.
Thank you, Chairman. All I'm doing is that Councillor Ridge obviously hasn't found the raised hand, and he's had his hand up for quite some time.
Oh, has he?
So I have no comment on the meeting, but we seem to be ignoring Councillor Ridge at this stage.
I can't see him at all on my screen. Right. Okay. Is that all you wanted to say, Councillor Farr?
Sorry, yes, it was, Chairman. I just wanted to...
Thank you.
Sometime.
Councillor Ridge, apologies. You need to unmute yourself.
Wait a minute.
Yes, here we go. Excellent.
I've just unmuted you, Councillor Ridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, just this. I've got a bit of sympathy with the council really over these grant applications. One I've been dealing with because the situation is evolving all the time, and the rules are changing all the time. And I'll just read you an email I was dealing with a business in Lingfield from Claire Cortino. Thank you for raising this with me. I completely understand your concerns. I've spoken to the council to get the definitive position for you. Tandridge felt that the original guidance was vague, so initially wasn't providing grants to garages. They have now consulted BEIS, who have said that garages should be covered. All garages that have applied have either been paid, or if they were initially refused, are being contacted so that the funding does apply. So this is evolving all the time. So I do believe that the council, it's a bit unfair on the council. They have to let it run for a while to see what's happening and how they can help people. So I do believe that if you left this meeting a little bit longer, there would be more stability and more things to talk about.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ridge. I'm going to take 2 or 3 more, and then we need to wind this down because we've got quite a bit more to discuss tonight. So Councillor Allen, and then Councillor Button, and then Councillor Langton, and then I propose to wind down, if wind up, whatever the expression is. So Councillor Allen next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I'm just going back to what I've said before. The Council Improvement Working Group probably has everything already in place that you're all talking about. Going back to 10th of October 2019, there was a draft action plan for the council recovery.
Yep.
Page 3 from the 10th of October 2019.4, a proposed framework for the improvement plan. It's already been done. We're not reinventing the wheel. Someone just needs to go back and dig out the Council Improvement Working Group, the papers, the terms of reference, and the people who are in it. And I suggest that shouldn't take too long to get one going.
Thank you. Councillor Button.
Thanks, Chairman. I'm going to propose that we move to a vote on this, and I'm going to suggest that our first working group meeting constructs the terms of reference which we approve at the 11th of June meeting. I share the comments of my colleagues that we need to get a grip of this at pace. I'm fully cognizant of the need to mitigate the impact on the workload of our officers, but I think from what Martin Allen has just said, it's possible to pick up the reins from previous work and move ahead at pace and do the modelling. And it does seem to me to be quite important that we should do that. Councillor Pursehouse has indicated that working groups can have other attendees. I think that would balance off your point about all the talents being involved. But I'm very concerned that as time goes by, and there won't be a meeting of strategy and resources after the June 11th meeting for some time, we need to get a grip, and we need to set up a working group to get that grip. So please, could we move to the vote, Chairman? And I promise you that if we have a meeting before June the 11th, we will ensure that we have terms of reference for this committee to approve at that meeting. Okay.
So your suggestion, Councillor Button, is slightly different working group to the one Councillor Allen was talking about.
It's exactly the working group I proposed at the beginning, a politically balanced working group to look at recovery, take hold of the budgetary figures, look at how we manage the challenges that the budget places, and make recommendations to Strategy and Resources Committee, so the committee makes decisions and the working group makes recommendations. Okay. Otherwise, every meeting will last this long and we'll all suffer from meeting phobia. I've been in Zooms for 5 hours today, and I really think that working groups are the way to get the detailed work done, not committees. Okay. So I'm going to formally request, Chairman, that we move to a vote.
Okay.
Sorry, can I just add one thing? Councillor Botton, the next meeting after the 1st of June is actually July.
Doesn't matter. Let's vote.
Okay. So, Councillor Langton, do you still want to speak, or shall we move to the vote?
I was just going to say, let's go for a vote. That's all I was going to say. Excellent. Let's just do it.
Excellent. Do you have a seconder, Councillor Botton?
Yes, he does. Me.
Okay. Right. So I'm going to ask Vince to read out the names. I think it's much simpler because we had a lot of confusion last time. Alphabetically, it's only members of the committee, of course, that can vote. So can you read out the names, please, Vince?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'll start with yourself, please, Chairman. So can you say for it?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay, thank you. And the Vice Chairman, please, Councillor Cooper.
Abstain.
Okay, and now alphabetically, please, starting with Councillor Botton. So Councillor Botton, please.
For, please.
Thank you. And Councillor Bourne.
For.
Thank you. Do we have Councillor Callcott? I think we do.
You
yes.
do. For.
Sorry. Thank you. And Councillor Dorinda Cooper, please.
For.
Okay. Councillor Davies.
For.
Thank you. And Councillor Duck.
Yeah, I'll abstain.
And Councillor Drex.
Yeah, as I said, I'll abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Langton.
For.
Councillor Lee.
For.
And Councillor Milton.
Abstain.
And Councillor Sir Nicholas White.
For.
Thank you. That vote is in favour, Chairman. The amendment is, the proposal is carried.
Okay. Thank you, Vince.
Can I just sorry, Chairman? In terms of what we're agreeing, do we wish to clarify exactly how many from each political group and the size of the group? The one referred to, the Council Improvement Working Group, was 2 members from each of the main groups plus 1 from the independent group. That's just an observation, but
isn't that something that will come out from the paper that this group are going to meet and do?
It's not coming out with a paper, it's getting on with it.
Well, you need to know the numbers, Councillor Bourne.
What?
I thought Councillor Bottom was suggesting that they get together, or there is some sort of get together to come up with terms of reference. The terms of reference should include the numbers of members of the group. So that's what
I'm happy to suggest that now, Chairman. I'm happy to suggest that there are 4 Conservatives, 3 OLRG Independents and 3 Liberal Democrats, and that we meet before the June the 11th Strategy and Resources meeting in order to firm up terms of reference and other matters. I think 433 would do the job, and therefore I'm formally proposing that, and maybe we could just vote on that.
Okay. Well, are we all agreed that whatever we've just voted on would apply to that slight amendment from Councillor Bottom without Vince having to read out the names again?
Agreed.
Yes, I see a lot of heads nodding. Excellent. So that's carried. Vince has got a steer. So I'm conscious there are a couple of points you wanted to discuss under part 2, Councillor Bourne. So I think, can we go back to the main recommendation then of this report, which is that we note the council's overall financial position subject to this amendment that has just been, well, it's a separate recommendation effectively, Vince, is it not?
That's correct, Chairman. Yes, so there'll be 2 parts to that
So
recommendation.
recommendation A would be Strategy and Resources notes the council's overall financial position. Recommendation B would be that this working group has been, it was agreed that this working group be set up with the composition that Councillor Bottom just explained.
Yes.
Excellent. Are we all happy with that?
Sorry, just an addition, Councillor Elias. I think we've been talking about a further report on the 11th of June, which will go through these figures and update them. Does that need to be a separate resolution?
I think we can take it. We can put the 3rd recommendation that this report be updated, but I'm conscious that the working group might have different ideas. So why don't we leave it? We leave it. Grant has committed to bring another report on to the 13th, 11th of June meeting anyway, but I don't think it needs a separate recommendation. Are you happy with that, Vince?
Yes, Chairman, that's clear to me. Thank you.
So I'm keen that we move on, and item 6, any other business which should be considered as a matter of urgency. I'm not aware of any. That is the case, isn't it not, Vince?
That's correct, Chairman. Yes, there is no urgent business.
So now we need to consider passing the following resolution: that members of the press and public be excluded for the following items because they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in the detailed paragraphs below of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act. And for the item in the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. So, and the nature of the exempt information is that paragraph 3, information relating to financial or business affairs of a particular person, including the authority holding that information. So, are we happy that we pass this resolution? Let's see.
Agreed.
Cards. Thank you very much. Let me just look at page 1 of my screen. And I think that